Keep me from own destruction so that I will make the best use of this time that is available to me. Give me insight that I might understand what I am studying, and help me to remember it when the time comes. Above all, I thank you for the ability to be able to study and for the many gifts, the talents you have given me. Help me always to use them in such a way that they honor you and do justice to myself. Amen. In the name Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Welcome to the thesis defense of student Nguyen Van Huy. The title of his thesis is Levinas's Notion of the Other, Challenging Individualism to Strengthen Neighborliness. And the student is aspiring for the degree Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. The members of the panel are Professor Blaise Ringor, the first critic, the advisor, Father Gilbert Guignano, yours truly as the second critic and chair of the panel. Ian, you have 25 minutes to expound on your thesis.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. My thesis title is Immanuel Levinas' Notion of the Other, Challenging Individualism to Strengthen Neighborliness. It is the biography of Emmanuel Levinas. For the background of study, that the relationship between us and the other is very important for a human being because it is somehow to help us to release our stress, feel comfortable, and make our lives more meaningful. It is also very necessary for us to live in this world because without the relationship, our lives are very boring. When we live alone in this world, we need family, relatives, friends, and the others. And all of them are the place for us to feel comfortable when we are with them. They willingly listen to us when we have problems. They accompany us when we are facing the challenges. They give us pieces of advice for overcoming our struggles. But there is some reasons which makes people not to build a relationship or concerning about it, and they just ignore it in their lives. The first is self-satisfaction. People always want to satisfy themselves and do whatever they want or wish, so they just focus on themselves and they enjoy their lives without concerning or observing for others. The second is carelessness. People always keep thinking that it is not their responsibility and they do not care about others. It is also an issue for us, for the society nowadays. That is why the reason there is some people are poor and some are rich, and it divides our society into different classes. The next is someone takes advantages from others to get something for themselves, and even if it hurts or harms or brings suffering to the other. The last is the people are afraid of the problem or being cheated by the other, because when they have the other, they think that the other is cheating with them. So in this paper, the researcher wants to use Levinas' notion of the other to challenge the idea of the individualism to provoke relationship between one and the others. This idea is very necessary for human beings nowadays because it leads people to concern and to be aware of others' existence. For the statement of the problem, the main problem is how can Levinas' notion of the other challenge individualism to strengthen neighborliness? That's the question one. What is the understanding of the people about individualism. The question 2, what is the notion of the other in Levinas' philosophy? For the objectives of the study, to have knowledge and to understand about the others of individualism, to explain the notion of the other according to Levinas' philosophy, and to prove that Levinas' notion of the other challenges individualism to strengthen neighborliness. For the significance of the study, to the Roman Catholic Church, this study would help the Catholic Church to be aware and to focus on people in modern times as a members of the Church. It is also within the perspective of the Catholic Church to take them as a part of its responsibility. To the Vietnamese Church, Vietnam is a member of the Roman Catholic Church and it belongs to a Catholic country in Asia. So the Vietnamese people also are responsible for the church. This study would further bring awareness to Vietnamese to take good care of the others who are part of their community. To the Vietnamese people, this study is necessary and significant for them because it would help them to be responsible for their action, behavior, and thinking of what they are doing. It is also a way to lead them to be aware of the other and to avoid hurting others by their action, behavior, and words. To the Claretian missionaries, this study helps members of Claretian missionaries to understand and to deepen the importance of the others who are in need and help them in their missions. To the researcher himself, this study prepares him for the mission in the future, such as being a member of this congregation to guide and teach people. He would understand the people who are in need and know how to accompany them in the guiding and take good care of the others. The next is conceptual framework. The first is the orange rectangle, which represents the notion of the other in Emmanuel Levinas. The second, the picture about 1 and 6 persons below represents the idea of individualism. The third, the arrow which connects the blue rectangle, the notion of the other in Levinas' philosophy, and the two pictures, 1 and 6 persons, together with the word challenges that represents the act of the challenging of the ideas of individualism by using the concept of the other in Levinas' philosophy. And the last, the picture of the people who are happy with each other, that is represent have knowledge and understanding. Next is chapter 2. In chapter 2, provides a knowledge and discusses on the ideas of people on individualism. The first is the idea, the self-reservation according to Aristotle. Aristotle focused on and put attention to the naturalness of every activity on an individual who uses this for the purpose of pursuing good health and happiness in aspects of physical, psychological, and ethical duties. Aristotle gives an example of nature where humans and animals survive by themselves by using their senses, appetites, desires, and self-awareness to protect and promote their action for the purpose of survival in the society or living places. The notion of self-reservation is appearing and established at that moment. The philosophy of Aristotle explained for us that the organism always look for the connection between body and soul through nature, because nature has many ways to live and is able direct living things in aspect of preservation. The preservation of the organism exists as a natural imperative which is sourced from every natural bodies, proper, and which in the case of humans exists as a chief ethical good and from which all social and political relations ultimately spring. Next is the idea of self-preservation according to Thomas Hobbes. Individual act according to the right preservation, which Hobbes described as the liberty each man has to use his own power as he will himself for the reservation of his own nature. That is to say, of his own life, the consequent deed of doing anything which in his own judgment and reason he shall conceive to be aptest means thereunto. Hope explains that human beings are naturally self-centered, competitive, and aspiring to domination. All of them must undergo training to fit for surety, and it is forced by a multiplicity of emotions, desires, aversions, fear, and passions. His view of human motives is notoriously unflattering, and he stresses that men do not seek society for his own sake or love of his fellows, but for honor and profit and love of themselves. Men always want to survive and want to have a good life, so they always use their power to our ability to protect themselves until they see that there is no other great power enough to endanger them. Human beings have a natural right in own things, which they have the right to do anything and use own means that will in their own judgment conduct to their self-protection and self-reservation. It is subjective right and inherent freedom belonging to individuals in the state of nature that is grounded in their need and desire to defend and preserve their lives. Next is the idea of autonomy. When we say that he or she is autonomous, so he or she is capable of self-regulation, we can understand in these two ways. First, when one claims that he is autonomous, so he is power, freedom to do anything for him or herself, because he or she, by the virtue of his will, possesses a power in the practical sphere, analogous to the power possessed by the legislative body in the political sphere. He or she has a standard for the practical law. It cannot remove or take away from her or his or her life. The second, it means that the aspect of psychology we have the capacity to do anything which is not based on inclination. The autonomy here is based on the pure practical reason of oneself. It is somehow related to the autocracy or self-command exhibited by a person who regulates his inclination according to demands of morality. When one has the idea of autonomy of the will, so that the freedom must go together. Moreover, he explained that the rational agents with autonomy also have gone with the idea of wills. The idea of wills here is a kind of causality of living being act or behavior in the properly rational. For the chapter 3, concentrates on the life and the work of Levinas. Then the researcher focused on the notion of the order according to Emmanuel Levinas. The same and the order. Levinas passionately articulated his notion of the same and the order in his Ethics of the Faith. The I that exists in the work is the same, but it never exists alone. Rather, it coexists with the order. The order is not the same as you are. It is the entity that exists outside of the I. The imperialism of the same. The self always has a tendency to categorize realities around him, including people. Thus, for Levinas, assimilating the order with the same is violence. Most contemporary intellectuals lack this kind of order-centered thinking, instead focusing too much on themselves. Because the subject is given too much weight, the I has the recent tendency to consider other people as objects in their thoughts. The violence of totality. When the I focuses on his being who wants to protect his or her own being, even at the price of the other. The self tends to the global of what is not being. As a result, violence can be seen even in ethics. The absorption of the other to the same is a form of violence. Levinas articulated the idea of infinite in the other as the counterpoint in this violence that is not the rule of imperial same. Next is the epiphany epiphany of the face, the disturbance of essence. The face is majestic and boundless in and of itself, but it is also poor and helpless, and this poverty incites the desire to be aggressive toward it. The other reveals himself before the self as face, and the latter is obligated to respond. This will always be preceded by an ethical inquiry and mandate to do what is right. As the self begins to acknowledge the other before he can even understand that there is the other. You shall not kill, says a person yet in heavenly order. There is no way for the self to understand what is a part of him, the other. The other is mysterious and will always be mysterious. Levinas would call this mysteriousness infinity. Despite the fact that he stands in front of him, he is incapable of fully comprehending the other. This can't be for the same person. He is attempting to thematize with this other in front of him. The other must have imbued himself with the notion that he is mysterious and infinite. Ethics is regarded as the earliest philosophy because omitting an ethical relationship, a manifestation of infinite precedes the understanding of the other's existence. In the end, he will be able to recognize the face of the other once he recognizes the other is not the same and that there is no other way. Responsibility for the other. As the other shows itself to the self, it orders the self not to kill. Through both, the praise will command the very same command. For Levinas, there can be no doubt that human relation begins at the encounter with the face. This face-to-face relation is the basis for all other discourse in society. He wants philosophy to begin with this relation, and this relation comes with an ethical demand. Before the face of the other, you shall not kill, and in fact, you have to defend the life of the other. As you encounter another's face, you cannot escape from this ethical command. It is inescapable. You cannot respond to the face of the other whom you encounter. This response always comes with the responsibility for the other. For Levinas, to be responsible is to be for other. In chapter 4, demonstrates how Levinas' notion of order challenges individualism and provokes neighborliness through Levinas' notion of the order. Being responsible for the other. The feeling of responsibility for the other is not a rational choice, but it is something that is happened to you, and that feeling or experience as being chosen or you are called elected that makes you unique. Irreplaceable for the unique one. This means that one has to be surrender himself in front of the other and to be accepted the suffering of other suffering. It is an imperative that receives all other consideration. For Levinas, it is called giving oneself as a hostage. So the self now on the way of becoming a victim, even if does not commit mistake or crime. He calls it victim without being guilty. In this sense, the responsibility and dedication to the other is beyond the thinking of the other. Even the other stops revenge, or persecute one, but he or she still apply it for him or herself. Levinas's ethics of responsibility and especially his ethics of substitution would seem to condemn the other to an impersonal anonymity, which is dangerously close to the impersonality of being that his philosophy explicitly seeks to overcome. Levinas once mentioned that one's surrender is the main idea against the absolute evil of Nazism and of other ideologies that subjugated the individual human. Moreover, to be surrender oneself, so he or she must be totally sacrifice him or herself to the other, and it must be strong enough to transfer it as absolute idea or thinking of one. So one has to be aware of other suffering. He or she cannot refuse it because it is sin or guilty when they ignore them. He or she must be responsible for the fate of the other because it affects to the society. Responsibility for the other, for his distress and his freedom, does not derive from the commitment, project, or antecedent disclosure, in which the subject would be positive for itself before being in depth. My responsibility to the others resists my very existence. One's freedom is constituted by responsibility or obligation to the other. Next is desire for the other. In desire, the I is born to work, the other is such a way as to compromise the sovereign self, identification of the I. The desire for the other is sociality, and the other welcomes me with an warm arm, so it is called the answer to the unquenchable desire. So that sociality answer to one unquenchable desire. Therefore, it is good for one insofar as it answers to my desire for the infinite. It is good of some sort. For this reason, Levinas wants to underline that we continue to work outside even when the people we encounter there make reasonable demands. Next is the other, my neighbor. Levinas' ethical philosophy is founded on the Hegelian concept of the other, which states that one can only assist in the presence of the other, whether that other be another person or God, in terms of the thematization of society. The order and proximity, Levinas possesses the responsibility of society and justice. A being's feeling of existence must be shared with the other. There must be justice among incomparable ones. Thematization, thought, history, and writing are unrequired. Levinas was not stopped at the level of the individual, as other is the other which he calls the neighbor or the third. The part that the other, my neighbor, is also a third in relation to the other. Likewise, a neighbor is birth of thought and consciousness of justice and of philosophy. But for him, it is a beginning of collection of other beings that make up the state, the society, and it's the just justice that meets the needs of the individuals who make up the society. Levinas requires some account of how, without universalization, the encounter with the other can be at the foundation of the moral society. For Levinas, there is a relationship between one and the others, and there is something linking them together. In his sense, it is called earthly morality, which one be aware of his or her actions with regard to another, beyond the scope of my intention to the point where, even after acknowledging a wrong in connection to another, even by my act of repentance, I can injure a third person. There is a system of kind of responsibility, and it requires one must apply for him or herself, which is a duty for another who must be nourished and clothed, my substitute for the other, my atonement for the suffering, and without a doubt, for the transgression of the other person. The stranger's obligation extend well beyond simple hospitality. It necessitates my readiness to take her place and bear her anguish and exile. It also necessitates that I atone for her transgression. For Levinas, the traces of individuality perceived in order are sign of God, and the faithful individuals ethically accountable. The order is a stranger. Their very existence is a jeopardy, and they are vulnerable. And the law invites us to love the stranger as he loves the stranger. The faith becomes ethical when one understands the depth of others' sorrow. The faith of the other exhorts us to act. It demands that we take responsibility and pay attention to its distinctiveness. That's all my presentation.
Thank you. Now take a deep breath because we will listen to Professor Blaze.
Good afternoon, brother.
Afternoon, sir.
Congratulations in finishing your research, and I appreciate how much effort you and your advisor have exerted in order to come up with this research. However, I would like to start off the discussion and the question with the inquiry, why you use the term challenging in the title. Are you challenging or criticizing or responding to individualism using Levinas's notion of the other?
The first, my attention is that like to be aware of the people who are following the idea of individualism, and not 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 like challenges, but something like make them awaken with their action or thinking or action or behavior they have done for the other.
So you want to tell other people that their individualistic thinking is something that is wrong.
Some in some cases it's that they in their action they thinking they do very bad thing for the other. It's like some in some cases.
So how this is a challenge for individualism if the intention is just partly yes and partly no. So I want to know, are you convinced that yes, I want to challenge individualism, or no, I don't want to challenge individualism?
I want to change their thinking about the way they are they are they are do with the others. The thinking, the action or the behavior they are have done with the others.
Okay, so let me go to other things before I go back to your answer. In page one, these are just my comments, and you do not necessarily need to answer this one. The quotation on friendships, it seems that it is a utilitarian kind of friendship. Because if not, then how Levinas understands relationship with the other? Because it is stated in here, friendships and mates are important for a variety of reasons, including increasing our emotional well-being, creating stability. So it is as if the other is being self-referential. So the ulterior motive for friendship is for you to have an emotional stability. That would be a contradictory to what Levinas is trying to propose to us. Okay, so I think you just have to remove that or put it into the context of Levinas, because everything matters when you write something about the philosopher, from the background of the study up to your recommendations. It all matters, okay? Because it would have various implications in the entire study. Okay? Uh, in page number 3, you stated there, taking care of other people is a way for us to take good care of us. One of the noblest things we can strive to accomplish is to look after someone. It enables us to be useful and beneficial to others as well as to ourselves. Now, is using the other not a form of violation according to Levinas? Or if using ourselves, allowing others to use us, because that is the implication of this quotation, would not mean violation of ourselves.
For this statement, I want this statement. I want to like support to the idea why we need the relationship between one and the other. So when we take the responsibility for the other, also we take care of us also. Because when the other is good, and we also feel something like we take good care of them, or something we concern about the relationship between us and them.
Yeah, because the words that you used would be problematic. Okay? Useful and beneficial. And that would merit violation of yourself. Okay? And violation of the other as well. On the same page, you also mentioned about karma. Now, what is the relationship of karma in your work?
Which base?
Yeah, maybe God, karma, or the rest of the world won't thank you, but your heart will. So that's on the same page, page number 3. Okay, you mentioned there about karma. Now, what is the relationship of karma with that of Levinas's notion of the other and of the neighbor?
It's like it means that like when the ethical of the face come from the face of the other, is require us to to take care or responsible for them, because God God of karma, like the God of the some religions, they are requires like implied in the face of the other, and we must be to aware of it. Sir. It's like my meanings about this this position.
Okay, but wouldn't it be unfaithful to Levinas himself? Because as you can see, it is a paraphrase one. Okay? And your source is caring for others is caring for ourselves, exploring your mind. And there was no author mentioned. So I'm wondering, is this something that is related to Levinas, or you are trying to say that you want to connect karma as well in terms of the Levinasian notion of the other?
Yeah, it's my mention about when I mentioned about I quote this sentence from the exploring the your mind. I want to explain more, sir. Explain more my the concern of the people of my thinking to connect with the idea of the Levinas.
Okay. So I think that would be problematic. You have to remove that. Okay? So kindly take note of that and put that into consideration. Uh, Now, I want to go to your page 4, statement of the problem. As you can see in here, there is no clear main problem. You have reduced everything into sub-questions, into sub-problems. So there is no specific main problem that you wish to answer. And that would be problematic at the end. And as you can see in your concluding part later on, I will also point it out, but perhaps internally. Uh, I just want to clarify you. What is your main problem? Is it the problem number 1, problem number 2, problem number 3? Because you have reduced everything into 3 sub questions.
my main problem is uh, my main problem is the like be a weekend of the people who are following the idea of individualism in the modern times. My main problem like using the notion of the order to awake or to be awakened the ideas the people who are following the ideas of the individualism to something like build a relationship between the order and us.
Okay, so I think you should put that in a clearer manner in your manuscript. And then in your definition of terms, you took the terms challenge, individualism, and neighborliness from Cambridge Dictionary. So how could this definition of terms justify the content of your research? I highly suggest you go directly to the sources which you have mentioned, especially in the body, right? How do you conceive individualism? How do Levinas conceive neighborliness? Okay, because it might bring misinterpretation. Now, let me go to the content itself. Since you are criticizing individualism, what are the forms of individualism that the philosophy of Levinas challenges?
The form of the Levinas want to challenge is uh, not focus on the not focus on the self of yourself. So it's like something like he want to challenge the the the, the carelessness of the people of the individualism. It's like something like that.
But how do you define individualism?
For my understand about the individualism is something like focus and do something to get do something for yourself only, and the order is the like the secondary. You are the first one. It's like in my understanding.
So, uh, what are the specific kinds of individualism to which Levinas is trying to respond to? Is it individualism in general, or individualism in the sense of the personalist understanding of individualism? Because as you would take note, Levinas is also considered as a personalist philosopher. Okay, and so there is a specific intention coming from the personalist circle. Yes, they are responding to individualism, but in particular, they are responding to the individualism that is being caused by capitalism and liberalism. Okay? It is not just simply individualism in the sense of narcissism. Because as how you defined it earlier, it seems to me that your understanding of individualism is equivalent to narcissism. But that is not the objective of the personalist philosophers. Okay? And so I think you need to have further reading with regards to individualism. I am not saying that you are totally wrong. What I am saying is that you should dig deeper in terms of individualism. You have to be more specific. What is the kind of individualism is Levinas trying to address? Okay? Because another thing, are you criticizing Kant in page 23, where you stated for Kant, when one has the idea of autonomy of the will, so the freedom must go together, which also you have projected earlier. So how do you see Kant? Is he an ally of Levinas, or is he the antagonist in Levinas's philosophy?
When I use the Kant autonomy, sir, because like the idea of autonomy, like I write in the chapter 2 that the autonomy like someone to has the power, and that they have the power, they have the capacity, and they have something in themselves, and they have they have freedom to do it, to do for themselves only. So and 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 so the autonomy of the person, the idea of the autonomy is like something to 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 do whatever you want with your power and your ability or your uh, or your capacity.
So autonomy is something that is negative because it gives you, it allows you to become an individualist. Is that what you are saying?
For, for me, sir, it's some people like some people thinking about the autonomies as the as the power of the people of the power of themselves to become
Okay,
the
but
negative.
for Kant, because you mentioned Kant, and it seems to me that you are criticizing his idea of autonomy. Am I correct that you are criticizing his idea of autonomy?
In chapter two, sir, I want to mention the understand of the individuals in the different philosophers. Sir. That's why I put Kant in the
Yes, so
understanding.
autonomy is equivalent to individualism.
Yeah, for me, for my research, is like that, sir.
Okay, so what you are trying to propose in here is that we should be devoid of autonomy, if that would be the case, because that would be the implication of what you are trying to propose.
In my opinion, sir, it's not a voice of autonomy, but not abuse the autonomy for them for you for themselves, sir. It's not abuse the idea of autonomy, sir.
Okay, I think to resolve the gap, I highly suggest you revisit the second categorical imperative of Kant, okay, where he says that the person should be treated as an end in himself and never as a means. Why? Because that part of Kant is something that is vital to the personalist philosophers, to which Levinas is part of. Why? Because that part of Kant serves as their response to the individualism of their time. Okay? So Kant is an ally. The autonomy that Kant is trying to propose is something that would help you dissociate and criticize individualism. But with a healthy dose of neighborhood and neighborliness, which you mentioned. For the other things, I will perhaps defer my question so as to give more time to Father Sami. Maybe I'll just give this one to you and to Father Kids, the questions that I have.
Thank
Okay?
you, sir.
But overall, your work is good. It just needs further clarification and further fine tuning. Okay? So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Blaze. Are you still okay? You want to take a rest? Okay. Well, I will begin with some preliminary and general remarks with respect to your work. Regarding the topic, it addresses a fundamental anthropological and sociological issue. That is individualism, which can be expressed in many ways. No? Utilitarian approach to the other, uncaring attitude towards the other, even violence towards the other. You mentioned all these things. The structure of your thesis is quite logical and neat in its three-part pattern. So similar to thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and also to Sijad's Act. Actually, you did not mention Sijad's Act as your method of reflection, but it is very obvious in your work since you begin with the problem of individualism. And then the second part is the possible source of resolving the problem of individualism, which is the philosophy of Levinas. And then the solution to the problem, the third part. So it's a Sijad's Act. It's very obvious. Generally, the thesis is good in terms of form, okay, which includes The logical development of the thesis, the writing style is good, and the documentation of your sources and resources. And also in terms of content, which includes the description of the problem, the exposition of your source, the philosophy of Levinas, and the resolution of the problem in critical dialogue with your source. Now, I will now make some specific comments, observations. Please go to your conceptual framework on page 11. You have three elements actually in your thesis, right? And look at the order in your conceptual framework. You begin with Levinas's notion of the other, right? And then the second is on individualism, right?
Yes.
And the third one is on strengthening
Neighborliness.
neighborliness. So there's three parts of your thesis. Now, there is a kind of disparity between your conceptual framework and your actual thesis, the treatment of these three parts or three elements of your thesis. Because in chapter 2, which your thesis with which your thesis proper begins, you begin with a problem, which is individualism, not the notion of Levinas's notion of the other. And in chapter 3 is on the philosophy of Levinas, and chapter 4 it's on your synthesis, no? The critical treatment of individualism in the light of Levinas's philosophy, right? So there is a kind of disparity. As I mentioned earlier, actually, even if you don't mention here, you are following the See Judge Act method. So I suggest that you reorder your conceptual framework, okay? So that there will be a kind of harmony between your conceptual framework and your actual, the actual treatment of these elements in your thesis. Is that okay?
Okay, Father.
Now, please go to page 26. So, I have some, difficulty in reading some parts of your work because I find statements or sentences that are incomplete or that I cannot understand. So I will need your help to help me understand, okay? To make me understand. Page 26. On page 26, okay? The first paragraph, okay, for the United States. Are you there?
Yes, Father.
Okay. Now, go to line 7. That statement which begins with the United States of America. Can you read that? And the following sentence. The United States of America is known. Are you there? That is line 7. Can you read that?
The United States of America is known as the country of the free and the home of the courageous. From the Europe to Vietnam to Iraq, our military has battled for our freedoms in battles in all around the world.
Okay. Here, there is no quotation. Okay. Well, you have a footnote. But you use our military. What do you mean by our military, our freedom?
It's like I want to mention about the thinking of the people in United States, Father. They use
So you should not say our. You should not write our because you are you an American? Huh? No. So I mean there are many things. Many expressions, sentences like this, which are very confusing. Okay. So you know the mistake, no? Okay. So it's either you put a quotation mark, so it means that it is not yours, or you paraphrase and don't identify yourself with Americans. Okay.
Okay, Father.
You get the point, right?
Yes, Father.
Okay, page 44. Here is a sentence that I cannot understand. Go to the towards the bottom of the page, down. Okay, you have the second to the last sentence. The responsibility. Do you find that statement? Can you read that?
Read in the responsibility.
Yeah. Can you read that sentence? Yeah.
The responsibility that takes part coming from the self towards the other, even if there is no form of conversational interaction. For this philosophy, it
Okay, that's enough. Okay, interaction. Okay. Uh, do, do you consider that a complete sentence? There is no predicate, eh?
no,
So,
sir.
but I don't understand. First of all, it is not a complete sentence. Something's lacking there. And second is I don't understand. Can you explain that to me?
For this sentence, Father,
Mm.
because I want to use this sentence to support the idea of the responsibility in the light of the Levinas, Father.
Mm-hmm. And
And
what do you want to say in this statement? The responsibility that takes part coming from the self towards the other, even if there is no form of conversational interaction.
it's
I believe this is meaningful, but I cannot understand it.
maybe my because I also correct this one, Father,
Okay,
because
so you corrected it already.
lacking of something.
So what is your corrected version?
For the for this one, Father, because
Okay.
the responsibility to is like something that the self and the other is like something to connect with the self and the other is connecting with the thinking of the people outside. It's like uh, we cannot separate the responsibility from the self and the others. It's like something I understand. Right?
Yeah, I understand that, no? So perhaps it is better to use your own words, no? How, I mean, in writing your, the text of your thesis, no? Because I find several statements like this one, huh? Which are very unintelligible. Even on page 45, you have there three sentences that have to be corrected. The first paragraph, you have to go back to that,
Yes,
because
Father.
really it's very difficult to understand. Now, okay, more on the content of your thesis. On page 56, here you cite Paul Marcus, no? So you cite him in support of your thesis. It is on the subject. Okay. This is 1, 2, 3, third line, page 56. Here you cite Marcus, no? In Levinasian subject, okay, acts according to his spontaneous selfishness, that the subject is fundamentally egotistical. Okay? The subject is fundamentally egotistical. Okay? It is egotism is the subject's very nature. Okay? Uh, you cite Marcus there, right?
Yes, Father.
Okay, for what reason?
For the reason that, Father, because the in the Levinas version of the order, the 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 carelessness or the selfishness is something uh, like the problem of the something the document of the people or one for them. It's something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know why I ask you, okay? Because here you are making an assertion and citing Marcus that the subject is fundamentally egotistical. Okay? Now, on page 45, okay, and here, of course, you use your philosopher, Levinas, subjectivity isn't for itself, it's for someone else. Do you see the difference between these two affirmations, assertions? The first one on the subject as fundamentally egotistical. And then on page 45, the subject as not for itself, but for someone else. And of course, page 42, you say responsibility is the essential, primary, and fundamental structure of subjectivity. Okay, you see that? These two last sentences and the first sentence. Can you explain me, how you connect them, how you contrast them? How would you make sense of these two seemingly opposing statements in your thesis? How can you make sense of these two seemingly opposite assertions?
In the first statement, Father, because I want to my attention to that is the responsibility is like something like the main concept or the main idea to support to the idea of the Levinas in the notion of the order. And in for the second statement in Levinas is something like Marcus to something like rewrite or command in the idea of the Levinas, and something like to contradict with the not
But
contradict.
is there a way to bridge the two in the light of Levinas's philosophy?
That's Father, because the Marcus want to mention about it to clarify, Father, like clarify or something like explain the idea of the notion of the.
Correct me if I'm wrong, no?
Yes,
Because I have read in your thesis that Levinas speaks of the subject or the I before the encounter with the other. Isn't it?
No, Father.
He does not speak of the I
No.
before
Because
the encounter with the other.
No, Father.
Oh, but it is here in your thesis.
Because Levinas mentioned that the I is the later part from the first part is the encounter with the other. The encounter with the other with come first, and the I is the second part.
Yeah, that's why. So what I'm trying to say is that the I, prior to the encounter with the other, no, listen first. Listen. The I, prior to or before the encounter with the other, is egotistical. Because it is in the encounter with the other that the I becomes aware that the subjectivity of this I is essentially for the other. This is in your thesis, actually. So that's why I want to ask you whether, you really understood, what you have written in your thesis.
Yes, Father.
It seems not, eh? Okay. In normal conversation, we speak of responsibility very often. Perhaps you have heard it first from your parents. Be responsible. No? And you hear it from time to time from your formators. And you know what your formators mean when you say be responsible, right? Now, what is unique in Levinas's notion of responsibility?
Notion of the responsibility is the unique like something you think for the other person. That like the encounter with the face of the other is demand you to responsible for the other first. It's not you first, but the encounter with the face of it is first.
So, okay, so in Levinas's understanding or notion, to be responsible is to be responsible for the other, not for oneself. Okay, now, on pages 43 and 52, you write that responsibility is beyond freedom. It cannot have begun in my commitment, in my decision. Do you remember that sentence, statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure that you remember?
Yes, Father. It's
Okay.
my research in
Okay, now,
Bible.
this is my last question. What can you say about the vocation to missionary life in the light of Levinas's notion of responsibility, especially in the light of pages 43 and 52?
Can you tell me?
Okay, on pages 43 and 52, okay, that's why I told you, I asked you if you remember this sentence, and you say yes. Okay, you write that, okay, you listen. I will read it slowly. Yeah? This is what you have written. Responsibility is beyond freedom. It cannot have begun in my commitment or in my decision. Okay? Now my question is, in the light of this statement, what can you say about vocation to missionary life?
It's like the responsibility beyond the freedom is like you are not choose to you are not use your freedom to respond for them, but in the light of the novice Levinas of order is something demands you, or something like demands or require you to respond for them. It's not you respond or make the decision to respond for them, but there is something to demand you and requires you to do it for the other.
Yeah, so you should include that in your vocational discernment, okay? Yes, thank you. Blaze, back to you.
Oh, brother, on a final note, this is just my last question.
Yes.
With regards to your thesis. How do you understand self-preservation? Because you mentioned about self-preservation as the root of individualism. And then you mentioned there Aristotle and Thomas Hobbes. Is it really the case with the individualism?
In the context of the modernity, Father, sir, because the self-preservation is understanding by the people that's like they use it for they use the power or the ability to or something of themselves to reserve them for their no, to protect them from the danger, sir. It's like I mentioned in the chapter 2, the individual in the COVID-19 situation, sir, because the people always think for themselves and use their like power or money to buy something for their family or for themselves first, but the other is later.
Okay. So it did more damage in your research as to how I see it. Because self-preservation is not, again, equivalent to individualism. Okay? So you have to trace individualism, at least on the level of how the personalist thinkers such as Levinas would think of individualism and how would they respond to it. Okay? So I will send to you the copy of it. I believe I have one, but just for you to have a start of, take note of the book Why Liberalism Failed by Patrick Deneen. So it will help you. It will help you have a leverage in terms of understanding what liberalism is and how does it really affect the other and the freedom, the kind of freedom that we are having today. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you and God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Father Gilbert, would you like to say something?
Well, I would like to congratulate also for the effort, and I think their observation are valid. No, you because you failed to explain further, but I think I like the way you work on your thesis. So, well, I have already said that you failed to emphasize that in Levinas he does not deny liberty as a value, but liberty is not the ultimate value. It's communion. Sine pa liberté me fraternité. So if you are going to compare the two, it's not liberty, which is absolute. And it's a critic to Sartre, who emphasized so much on liberty. Well, he is not denying that liberty is wrong, no? Of course, it's a value, but it's not the ultimate value. It's communion. So you need to, it's very powerful in living us. And I think it can respond to Father Sammy's
Yes.
question.
For a while, and then, well, we are going to decide on your fate, or, well, the fate of your thesis. But you have to do some, well, minor revisions in your work. I have given to Father Lito your text, and I have corrected many things already there. You just okay, incorporate them in your final text. Okay.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Is there picture taking? One more.
Congrats hội with minor division.
Cái hội,
Sister here, hội.
chào chị Thoa nha.
Chào chị Thoa.
Hội, your sister is here.
Chị Thoa,
Sorry,
chị Thoa.
hội pass rồi.
Perfecto.
Qua rồi.
Perfecto.
Trở lại ít. Không nghe cả nữa.
Ngon hội ơi.
Qua rồi.
Ăn
Trở
mừng,
lại
ăn
ít
mừng,
à.
ăn mừng.
Nói sau thôi, nói sau nha.
Ok em ơi, nói chuyện sau nhá. Uy ơi. Ơi. Cái chi rồi ạ?
Cứ từ hôm nay bạn Uy defend chứ. Bạn Uy the last à?
Chuẩn bị rồi.
Thiếu camus mà ngon luôn á. Sáng đi chè bị bần rồi, thiếu camus rồi.
Cái gì cơ? Hồi sáng đi chơi bị vần quất trời luôn.
Bị tôn bần cho đi chè chết luôn. Cắm camus là xong rồi.
Đúng rồi. Đi chế nói vậy sai là phải, nó vật là phải rồi. Mà sầu chúa là ly chề mà mày nói thế. Đôi khi mình cũng phải có cái lập trường của mình chứ. Tao đập luôn đấy như sầu chúa ly chề đi nói vậy.